Well, as long as Putin's at the helm, you don't think that there
My
could be a
impression is that
post-Putin Russia?
Russians across Europe are not keen to see Russia lose. And
You
I
think
think,
it's that ingrained that they
I
don't
don't
think
know,
about
that was
this
somebody
feeling?
else's assessment. So I don't know, but that was someone else's assessment, is not wanting to see Russia lose. And certainly Russians in Russia who are poor to begin with are going to be really upset when they're told, oh, by the way, you trashed much of Ukraine, and guess what? You owe them.
Yeah.
I just don't see Russians owning up to what they've done.
But do you not think that's an extent because, partially because of the historical events that have happened, but also because the indoctrination and propaganda machine that Putin has spent so long
Isn't
developing?
there another piece that we human beings always like to blame other people rather than looking at ourselves? So, all across Europe and the United States, we're all dumping on immigrants. And I got it. You want to have legal immigration and keep track of who's coming and going. And but if you look at fundamental problems, I suspect the fundamental problem in the United States is truly the tax code. I could be wrong about that diagnosis, but I suspect that's it. In whom you're funneling money to and whom you're denying it to. And if the richest people don't pay for any of the infrastructure, then the poorer people have to. And not getting the budget more into balance. I think it's probably more on those lines. So you externalize it on other people, or you say the Europeans are dragging us down. It's all this money we had to pay for alliances with Europe. And then you have far right across Europe playing similar narratives. This is very human. Instead of owning up, you know what? Most of the problems in each of our societies are problems of our own making or failure to get at. Uh,
Sure, I
Right?
appreciate
And
that.
most people don't wanna look at it that way.
No, sure, you can be in denial, but is there not, from a policy standpoint, a degree of truth that Russians have been victims? I'm not trying to deny the victimization attitude that Russians tend to have. Look at Putin and the way he frames things. But do you
Okay,
not think that that's a
okay,
part of the problem?
okay. I'm gonna talk about victimization. So I was reading Gulag Archipelago when I was on sabbatical in London a couple of years ago. I should have read it when it came out, I didn't. And what struck me as an old person reading that book was the cruelty of Russians to each other. It was not only the camp guards being awful to the prisoners, it was the prisoners being awful to each other. It was people along the way being awful to people in the trains. It was family members being awful to each other, of people coming back and neighbors being awful, right? Of not, oh, and being willing to inflict incredible cruelties on each other or ignore that they were going on. The only way you get a gulag system that's nationwide, is because it's got people across the nation making it work at all levels, right? You can selling food to it, doing whatever it is you're doing, and the cruelty is just mind blowing. And then I'll give you a counter example for the United States. So, country with slavery, talk about cruelty. Unbelievable to do that to other human beings. And the legacy of slavery still remains in the United States with profoundly different outcomes of people depending on which side of slavery they sat on, whether they were enslaved or not. But at the end of our Civil War, in which more Americans died than the totality of all our other wars combined. There wasn't a bloodbath in the South against white Southerners, right? General Lee surrenders at Appomattox. I think he trades in a sword, maybe. His plantation becomes Arlington National Cemetery. Payback is like, okay, this is what you did, buddy. It's a big cemetery now. But people are allowed to return home. And the people who are executed are the people, the commandant of Andersonville, which was a huge prison camp where there were appalling conditions and lots of Union soldiers died. That man's executed, along with the assassins of Abraham Lincoln, including, I don't know, a female tavern, somebody or other who may or may not have been guilty. But that's it. It's a much smaller number. And the United States has many problems. You're seeing them all over the world. But as you think about that level of cruelty to winning versus losing side, compare it to the Russian Civil War, boy, if the whites were in the village, they butchered the reds. And when the reds were in the village, they butchered the whites. I mean, it's just incredible.